Was there any, like, besides the quarterback situation, was there any big storylines coming out of the spring?
I think one of them is I'll give you one on offense, one on defense. Offense, they brought in tight end Jack Endries from Cal, and he's someone who is basically going to go right to the tight end one spot. Texas loses Gunnar Helm, went to the Titans. Before that, they had Jatavian Sanders a year prior, went to the Panthers. So there was those back-to-back years of having an NFL tight end in your offense, and the next man up was a redshirt freshman that there's a lot of faith in, but still unproven. So they went to get injuries, really reliable chain mover, someone we think Arch Manning is going to target a good amount, and be someone who is there over the middle and on some underneath stuff to help free things up for other Texas receivers. And then on defense, I think you have to look at Michael Taft coming back. That was a secondary last year that featured Jahdae Barron, who won the Thorpe, and Andrew Makuba, who transferred over from Clemson but was an Austin native. And all those guys were close friends growing up. They had all trained together. They didn't go to the same school, but they just knew each other basically from about ninth grade on, and they finally play in the back end of the Texas Longhorns defense, and they're one of the best defenses in the country. So Jahdae Barron goes in the first round, Makuba goes in the second, but Michael Taft comes back. And it's not a super inexperienced, secondary. As you can see, you see a lot of SRs and JRs there at the top of that depth chart. So they like Jelani McDonald. They're going to ask a lot of Jalen Gilbo at corner. And they're going to ask a lot of Kobe Black at competing with Jalen Gilbo for that corner spot. So a lot of experience should be exciting.
Okay, so then I mean I've been doing some of these interviews, and for the most part, I mean I just did Oklahoma State, and it's like everything is color, which means that they're either a transfer or a freshman, but not here at Texas. So, and that's a good thing when you have a big program like Texas. So. You already talked about one of the key guys that came in via the portal and injuries. So sticking on offense, they also added Mosley from Stanford. That had to be a really big addition after losing Golden, especially, and a couple of their other top receivers. But Mosley sure had a heck of a freshman season last year. Yeah,
it's interesting. They're adding two West Coast standouts from an East Coast league. Stanford and Cal in the ACC. Mosley as someone who Steve Sarkisian said they recruited. He sustained a knee injury, I believe, in high school, and that kind of stopped when they were recruiting him. But once he started getting going on the field, he was one of Stanford's, a bright spot of a pretty pitiful Stanford team. And he didn't just rack up his yards against some bad ACC teams. He put it on Louisville, and they had some good defenders last year. So someone who, along with DeAndre Moore, and Ryan Wingo, two guys with a lot of expectations. They expect for him to come in and be a starter. Position-wise, Steve Sarkisian moves everybody so much that it's hard to say that position means he's going to be at that spot. Okay. But you'll see him moved all over. You'll probably see him outside a little bit more often. But someone with a little bit of experience and gives some of those highly rated freshmen a little bit time to gel before getting their opportunity.
And speaking of the rest of the portal, we're taking a look at the rivals list. Were there any other guys that are coming in that you think would be key contributors?
Yeah, the guy right there at the top, Murad Watson. I think Texas brought in 5 defensive tackles from the portal, and he was the last one. He had a freshman All-American season at Syracuse. Enters the portal, Ohio State, Penn State, Miami, all interested in him, but he commits to Texas. And Texas had already brought in 3 in the portal, I believe, in the first window. They added 1 more from Maryland, and then they add Murad Watson. I think he's someone, with the way Texas deploys its defensive tackles, for the most part, you can be a starter, but you're basically getting 30 snaps a game each person.
Yeah.
He's going to be someone, I think, right there on the front line, getting a lot of snaps and making a disruptive impact on the opposing offense.
Yeah, we have, and Tucker does a great job as so hard as especially in college with the depth charts. But do you think, because he has right now Brevard and Shaw as the starters up front, do you think again that it's just interchangeable, not a big deal, or do you think Watson should be along the starting lines? And what about Brevard and Shaw?
Yeah, Brevard, I think, is going to be first guy out there. Shaw, we'll see. I think Watson and Brevard, their skill sets pair pretty well together.
Okay.
I think January and Shaw, their skill sets deployed together would go pretty well. Hero Canoe from Ohio State has gotten a lot of positive reporting as of late. So he's someone who I believe is German and is just still in his early portions of his football career. And then you see Justice Terry there. He's a true freshman 5-star from the state of Georgia, only listed at 268 pounds. So we'll see what happens, what role he fills in. Maybe he gets some more pass rush opportunities or defensive end chances. But Texas feels like at least one of those guys from the defensive tackles that they brought in is going to look good and be what they need from that position after having great play for the last 3 years.
Yeah, definitely. Some of those guys have left or in the NFL now. So looks like they've done a pretty good job so far on paper bringing those guys in. Let's talk about the recruiting, which Rivals has as number one in the country. Why not? When they list, I just can't even believe it. Was it 16 4-stars and 4 5-stars, which is just amazing. But in a way, that's I'm sure fans in Texas are like, yeah, that's the way it should be. This is Texas. This is the school in Texas, and that's what our recruiting should look like every year. We should be And now I'm not saying, of course, everyone is from Texas, as we see with their top 3 there, where 3 of the top 4 5-stars are from Texas, but. That's the melting pot. That's what you want to take advantage of, and it looks like Sarkisian's did a fantastic job of that.
Yeah, he's getting the best that he can from Texas, and he's trying to get the best that he can from all over. Texas has a very good NIL structure and apparatus, and it's also a good program. So you get if you're a high school kid, or a portal player, you get the best of both worlds. We talked a little bit about Justice Terry, but going up to those other 5-stars, Jonah Williams, he actually enrolled early and ended up being the starting left fielder for the Longhorn baseball team this past year. So he spent a lot of time playing baseball. He's kind of getting back into the swing of things with football. Very athletic, but a safety, even though he's listed as an athlete. A guy who's going to be playing probably a boundary safety role. Someone who's super athletic, but we got to see how he can process. The other 5-stars, one was Kalik Lockett, wide receiver from Saxe. He's got great speed and size and body control. I think if there is going to be a receiver who from that freshman class who steps up, he may be getting an opportunity, but Dalen McCutcheon has earned a lot more mention of late. And then up there, Lance Jackson, honestly, a no-nonsense recruitment. He's a little brother of Landon Jackson, who started his career at LSU, goes to Arkansas, gets picked in the draft. He had a previous relationship with Texas defensive coordinator Pete Kwiatkowski when he was up at Washington, because Kwiatkowski was recruiting Landon Jackson. They maintained that recruitment, goes up to Texarkana, gets him, and he's going to be, I think, a really special player down the line. So a lot of stars in that class, and I'll hit the quarterback real quick. KJ Lacey from Saraland, Alabama, just outside Mobile. He had Ryan Williams, of Alabama fame, to throw to for a few of his seasons there in Alabama. Okay. Ryan Williams graduates early, and KJ Lacey doesn't take a step back. He's still playing really well. He's probably right at 6 foot 180. Has a lot of great movement skills and really good arm talent, but he's slight. He's not a gunslinger by any means, and he's going to have to learn what's a complicated offense. So should be a lot of fun to track him as he gets going in his career. Texas does not offer very many quarterbacks. They wanted him, they got him, and he jumped in the fold pretty quick.
And here we have Owens as the number 2, and Caldwell, who you mentioned, the transfer 3, and there's Lacey 4. if Manning were to go down at all, as you mentioned, Texas quarterbacks go down. So if Manning were to go down for a couple of games, is there a definite number two?
I think that's to be determined. I
Okay.
think that they brought in Caldwell because they wanted that veteran. In case of emergency, do you want to put a national championship type season on the hands of a redshirt freshman who has not started a game? Granted, he's from Troy, Jacksonville State, Gardner-Webb. It's not like he's tearing up the highest levels, but he fits what Texas wants to do, and you know that he's going to be someone who is able to operate the offense. May not make any wow plays, but it may make the plays that you need to get in and get out of the game. Now, if it's okay, you got to start this guy for 5 games or something, I don't know who they're going to go with. I think it looks a little bit different, but Texas hopes they don't have to have that problem. Even so, that's why they brought in Caldwell to have a chance to have an experienced guy to steady the ship.
Who would be considered breakout material? Players that are kind of, whether they've bided their time, like an Arch Manning. He would be the premier breakout player in all of college football. But if you had to add a couple more players who are ready to maybe take that next step, holdovers from last year's team on both offense and defense, who would you point to?
Yeah, I'd tell people to keep an eye out on C.J. Baxter, and I know it's hard to say when he's a former 5-star, but he missed all of last year after suffering ligament injuries in his knee during camp, and he had high expectations. He actually started during his true freshman season over Jonathan Brooks, got dinged up a little bit, and then Jonathan Brooks and him swapped, but Brooks took over. Until he was injured. So Baxter was entering last year as the guy, gets hurt, and Texas run game struggles as a result. I know Quintravian Weiser hit 1,000 yards, but it wasn't the type of run game where against the elite opponents, the really good defenses, they really had much of a push.
Okay.
Maybe C.J. Baxter at 6'1", 230 can make things a little bit different in that regard. But a lot of optimism about what he might be able to do within the program coming back from injury.
Okay. Anyone else on offense, or he would be the guy?
I think he's the guy. If you want to pick an O lineman, left tackle Trevor Gooseby, standing in for Kelvin Banks, big shoes to fill. But he had to do it against, I think, Georgia, Clemson, Texas A&M last year, got some opportunities and looked right at home, playing left tackle, to where Texas thinks they have another high draft pick on their hands protecting Arch Manning's blind side.
And that's a huge position, the unit itself. That is, matter of fact, if you look at it, the line of scrimmage where games are won and lost, usually in football, those are the major question marks, if there are question marks on this Texas team, because of the losses you mentioned on the inside of defensive tackle and also along the offensive line. Are they replacing 4 starters, I believe?
They are replacing 4 starters, but when you look at that, Trevor Gooseby standing in for Kelvin Banks, he's a third-year player with starts, with action in the college football playoff, in the SEC championship game. So he's not just, stepping up off the bench.
Sure.
Neto Umeozulu, 4th-year player, massive player, has seen action, not very many starts, but a 4th-year player. And I've been saying kind of all off season, like if you have to replace 4 starters, you might as well make the most of it and get guys who have been in the program for a while. Even though Cole Hudson is not a returning starter, he's played in, I think, like 30 games. He used to rotate with DJ Campbell at guard. So he has plenty of experience, even if it's not as a returning starter. DJ Campbell is a returning starter.
Okay.
The only guy from that line who's from last year's line who stuck around, going to be a leader. High expectations on him. They feel like they kind of know what they have at each spot, with the exception of right tackle. And I think you got it right there. Brandon Baker and Andre Kojo battling it out. Andre Kojo is young for his age. You see he's a redshirt sophomore, and I think he's only 19 or maybe even just barely 20. So he's young. Brandon Baker's a 5-star from California. Maybe doesn't look exactly like your typical tackle, but has good feet. And I really feel like that's the battle to watch throughout camp, is who steps up and takes that right tackle spot.
Okay, and then anyone on defense that you think would be a player to watch that's ready for a breakout?
I don't think Colin Simmons fits because he's already well thought of. in college football. A lot of top 10 players lists include him in the top 10. I think he is going to stand out this year. But Jelani McDonald, someone who's super versatile playing in the defensive secondary. He may see some time at playing nickel, which he did last year. He may see some time at deep safety. And he's someone who a lot of people just rave about his enthusiasm for the game. Someone who plays the game, like it is a game and not a job. And really you can see his joy that way. And he had a great interception last year against Kentucky, just a wow play that kind of highlights some of what he can bring to the table. He'll be stepping in, replacing Andrew Makuba, big shoes to fill, but Jelani McDonald, as you can tell, he's a junior. He's got experience playing the position. It's not something where it's like, okay, you have this superb athlete who can't process. Like, he's proven he can see it and read and react a little bit.
Okay, holdovers, the top guys to keep an eye on for the program. You already mentioned Simmons. Anthony Hill just looks like he could just be even who knows how good now that he might be entering his last season. Who knows? And then you got Trey Moore, who's always made some plays that we've seen from time to time. To mention Michael Taft. So are those the primary four guys on defense? Are there any other standouts on defense that we should be aware of that were already standouts last year? Or do we hit the right four?
I think you hit him. Leonga Lafau, there at will linebacker. I think he'll be someone who is great in coverage this year, working right by Anthony Hill. And then Ethan Burke up there at that jack position. He watched Barron Sorrell get drafted by the hometown Saints last year. Now he's someone who basically split time with Sorrell, and the job is now all his. Someone there's a lot of confidence in, and someone who's been playing good football for Texas for at least 3 seasons.
Okay, and how about on offense? Obviously, we know about a few of them we've already talked about. Is there anybody we didn't talk about? Maybe the receivers outside of Mosley? Is there a receiver maybe that is have already proven himself in a way, but maybe we just don't know as much as we should?
Yeah, Ryan Wingo was a freshman last year, and I think he picked up right around 500 total yards. He had some end arounds for rushes, but he had about 400. I think just around 400 something receiving yards. And there was the upper tier of Jeremiah Smith, Cam Coleman, Ryan Williams as far as freshman wide receivers go. Ryan Wingo was right behind him, but he was behind him. He was sometimes more athlete than wide receiver. That's a big thing he's had to adjust this year. But he's got good rapport with Arch Manning. They came in the same class, and that's someone who you might wouldn't be surprised to see that being a number 1 target this year.
Before we kind of wrap up, and I want to wrap up with the Ohio State game and a few other things regarding the expectations of the team for the season. Are there any key injuries or anything like that we need to keep an eye on? Anybody that may or may not be ready to start the season?
Yeah, got to make sure CJ Baxter comes back fully healthy because he injured himself in camp last year. Similar for Christian Clark, another running back. Those guys got hurt in basically the span of 3 days. So Texas lost 2 running backs who were going to play a good amount last year in the span of 3 days of the last year. Both are participating. Both seem like they're going to be ready to go. That's about it. They kind of dialed things back over the course of spring practice because they played 16 games. There were some players who were pretty beat up, as you might expect, playing 16 games, going through a college football playoff. So they dialed things back, tried to get some guys some rest, try to get some younger guys some reps, and as a result, they came out of it pretty healthy.